Hi, welcome to the Optimizing Your Brilliance podcast, where we get to the source of what makes people brilliant and explore how to eradicate the barriers that stop you from shining. By shining, I mean being at your absolute best in both work and life. You'll hear from business and thought leaders who bear all and share their insider secrets, along with my episodes focused on optimizing your performance, productivity, success, and well-being. My name is Estelle Read, founder of Be, executive coach, speaker, and best-selling author of Inner Brilliance, Outer Shine, 10 Antidotes to Imposter Syndrome, Workaholism, and Stress. So, if you're ready to take your work life to the next level, let's begin. Hello, can you do me a favour? Would you mind either liking or subscribing wherever it is that you listen? So maybe that's on YouTube or Spotify or Apple, because that will help us to keep going and keep growing. The other thing that will be really helpful is if you could share it with someone that would also benefit from the content. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Right, let's get on. So, listeners, you are in for a real treat today because I've got here with me Sarah Walker-Smith, who is the CEO of Shakespeare Martineau. She is the only female non-lawyer CEO in the legal top 55 and was recently named as the UK's most influential legal CEO on social media. It's brilliant.
Makes me laugh.
I think it's amazing. She also happens to be a trained accountant, having worked for PwC and Deloitte. So commercial know-how is second nature. But Sarah firmly believes and puts people at the source of, and the core of everything she does, as well as marketing and branding experience she gained during her 8 years at Boots PLC. Sarah is a strategic leader, passionate about the potential of people, the possibilities of inclusive organisations, and the power of common purpose for the benefit of the business and society. Sarah looks to challenge the norm in the legal sector and wider business world. She's passionate about levelling the playing field, encouraging everyone to bring their authentic selves to work, and the power of unlocking potential in her colleagues and clients. And I know this firsthand, having experienced you. A self-professed geek, Sarah loves learning and is currently exploring the relationship between leadership, purpose, and trust. And I'm sure we'll dig into that as we get talking. I had to look up how long you and I have known each other. I had to get my spreadsheet out and everything.
Not your spreadsheet. No, not your spreadsheet.
But it was my accounting spreadsheet, funnily enough. But we've worked, or I've worked for you for over 5 years. I can't believe where that time has gone. Obviously, that was when you were leading a previous organisation, but you are one of the most inspirational leaders I've had the pleasure of knowing. You're definitely a thought leader, and I can't wait to begin with you and start this interview. So let's begin.
I've just realised I'm looking all kind of shiny. I don't know why I'm looking shiny. I've got a sad lamp, I must admit, because it's really dark in here at the moment. So if I look like an alien, it's because I've got a sad lamp, which is helping me at the moment, but it's making me look a bit weird and shiny. But at least you can see me, which is the main thing.
I think you look lovely.
Oh,
you
thank
look all glowing.
Glowy, actually.
So at this point in the interview, I normally say to the leaders or entrepreneurs, tell me about your average day. And you have not been having the average day, have you? Since this pandemic. So come on, tell us about you, your role,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There is no such thing as an average day. Apart from, I guess, since the pandemic started, the main piece of consistency is me in the shed. So this is the shed that you can see me in at the moment, and it's caused a lot of hilarity inside the business because essentially I've been working from the shed since lockdown happened, and it was a complete coincidence that I managed to buy. I say a shed; it's a nice little summer house, really. We'd bought this. It was sitting here doing nothing. I had visions of turning it into a recording studio because I sing as well. And then just about a month, 2 months maybe before the pandemic, I got some electricity installed and we cladded it so that it got a bit of insulation. And it must have been some freaky premonition because the shed has now become my home, and I've hardly left the shed literally since March. And so here I am, kind of broadcasting from the shed, but also talking to all my guys, my people, and just running a large business from a shed. Who'd have thought it, really? So the only average thing about my day is I spend probably 12 hours a day in this shed. But other than that, there is no average day. I could be spending my time on lots of one-to-ones. I could be spending my time on lots of external webinars, talking to people outside the business, running workshops, or getting involved in doing stuff inside the business, board meetings. I mean, there's no such thing. That the days are very long at the moment. They're eating into the weekends, but that's because we've got so much going on with our strategic review. So it kind of does feel to me like we're ploughing ahead. And I think that's probably the other thing I would say is we've made a very conscious decision that we want to push ahead and run into the storm, not sit down and batten down the hatches. So that's making it a lot of variety, and it's hard work, but it's positive hard work. And I think myself and my main board members were reflecting on this morning. It feels like we're into positive craziness as opposed to the really difficult stuff that was going on at the beginning, I think.
What a brilliant reframe. And I think that's why you are as successful as you are, because you come up with these amazing phrases, and I must admit, I spoke about battening down the hatches, I'm just getting my head down and I'm ploughing on. But in my mind, that was, just moving on, progressing. But no, I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
We're so wired. I mean, I work with some amazing like-minded people, and we're all of us wired to find opportunities. So we coined a phrase about a year ago, positive, passionate people in the business. And it does feel like that. So we are wired to find the positivity in things that are difficult. And let's face it, the last, pretty much 2020 has been amazingly difficult, but we genuinely see it as an opportunity. And we're not trying to take away from anybody how difficult the year has been. I mean, it's horribly difficult, and we've still got to be very mindful that some people are having really, really quite shocking personal experiences going on, but we're just determined to make something positive come out of something so negative. So I think that's a really strong underpinning theme. Certainly it's my philosophy, but thank goodness I work around lots of people who share that philosophy as well.
That is fabulous. You're making my hair stand on end. So, as you think about your career, what for you has been something that you feel really proud of, an achievement, a career result? What springs to mind?
So you're about to get another insight about me now. I struggle with that question because I keep thinking I haven't finished yet. So for me, I will never get complacent, and I'll never sit here and go, oh yeah, I've nailed it. Because the minute I feel like at the moment in particular, it's like walking a tightrope because we're trying to push on with so much. The problem with me is I'll probably never get to the other side of the tightrope because I will find another tightrope, or I'll just extend the goal. So I really struggle to talk about achievements because I haven't finished yet, and I feel that there's so much more to do. However, trying to push myself. Let's talk about some milestones. So I feel immensely proud of the business that I used to work with and what we were able to do there, taking that from being about 18 to about 80 million in the time I was there. And I know it continues to grow and prosper. So I feel really proud of that. I feel really proud of the business I'm in at the moment and how we've responded to what's going on. I guess on a personal level, I feel I hesitate before I say this, but I feel it was an achievement getting the job in the first place. But of course, for me, the minute I get the job, my brain goes to, no, I've now got to make a success of it. So I would never sit here and go, look at me, I'm great, I got a job. But actually getting the job, my current job, was a bit of a watershed, really, because as we said, I'm the first woman non-lawyer doing this. And I think I'm virtually the only non-lawyer in the top 50 or so running a law firm. There'll probably be a couple of others out there, and it does change from time to time, but I'm in a tiny handful of people doing this. So I guess getting it was an achievement, but I don't see it like that. For me, I've got to succeed and deliver before I'll see that as an achievement. So there's those things. And on a personal level, I wrote and directed and produced a musical. It's about 4 years ago now. And I struggled at the time to see that as an achievement. I really struggled with it. But now that I've put a bit of a space, I can look back on that and think, yeah, okay, we achieved something there. That was quite special as well.
What caused you to struggle to not perceive it as achievement? Because I remember hearing about this, in the organisation. I was thinking, how do you lead an organisation, write and produce a musical?
And also, I mean, I don't read and write music, so I'd wanted to write a musical for years and years and years, and I kept seeing barriers. And in the end, I flipped my mindset to say, no, I'm going to find a solution to those barriers and push myself through it. But I suppose you're getting right in that. I knew you would. The problem that I've got is that it wasn't perfect. So of course, I maybe as leaders, we all suffer from this perfection complex, but there were things in hindsight I would have done differently. I would have rewritten bits of it. I would have changed scenes. When I consider it from a base of me not reading and writing music, it was a phenomenal achievement. But if I consider it from the base of what somebody who's a really great composer would have written, it wasn't good enough. So I suppose what I've had to do over that 4 years is reset my benchmark as to how I was assessing that achievement or not. So like I say, when I consider it bottom up, I now can see it as an achievement. If I look at it top down, it wasn't good enough to be on in the West End, but of course it wouldn't. We were doing this in our spare time. I didn't know what I was doing. I had a phenomenal team of people, but they could only work with me for a very short period of time, for a few weeks before we produced it. So I've really had to reset my brain as to what realistically success was like. And then that's allowed me to now see it as an achievement. Took me some time though.
But that's a really great quote. I had to reset my brain because, all too often we do the comparison thing, don't we?
Yeah.
We do the compare, contrast. And one of the things I talk about is when I'm working with clients is I talk about staying in our lane. Yeah. And what I mean by that is, really all we're in competition with is ourselves a lot of the time. And you're right about resetting your brain and it is just us, but no, absolutely incredible achievement. Do you celebrate?
What I hope to say, if I flip forwards, maybe one day, and maybe we need to talk again in a few years' time, I would love to think, for me, the achievement is that I've helped change the world of business for better, and that it's more acceptable for people like me to be leading business, and that I've opened up the path for lots of other people like me to be successfully leading major businesses. If I can get to that point and I can look back and see that it's just normal to have female chief execs or normal to have non-lawyers leading law firms, that's when we'll raise a glass of champagne at that point, Estelle.
Okay, deal. Because I was going to think people like you, and I thought, amazing people like you. So one of the things on this show, one of the things that we do is we get to the source and the source. Yeah. So the source, and the source being the inner source. So we talk about values a lot, beliefs. One of the reasons I set up this podcast is that I am privileged to hear so many stories from my execs. I get to hear their inner workings. And this morning, I was running a manager leader as coach program, and one of the delegates said, because we were talking about what's your biggest takeaway this morning, one of them said, "Oh my goodness me, I'm like everyone else."
And that was a real, and what they meant by that is what's going on inside is pretty much a lot like everybody else. So yes, so important to get to what's inside, but the source being that people find that really interesting. And one of the things that's always impressed me by you is how authentic and honest you are. And I think you will change the face of business in terms of leading it because of that honesty and authenticity. So what three values are important to you from a work or business perspective?
Yeah, there's so many of these actually. Whether these are values or not is a different point, but I would say inclusion, level playing field, number one. I feel so strongly, I am so privileged. I know you'll tell me off for saying that I'm lucky, but I am very, very lucky to be in the position that I'm at. I came from a very, very working class background, single parent mum, barmaid. You know, it wasn't your, well, I say your average what is an average background? There are millions of people out there like that at the moment. So, but it wasn't an obvious background to become a chartered accountant and a chief exec and all the rest of it. Again, my family weren't used to going to university and all of those things. So for me, anything I can do to help level up that playing field is a really important value for me, because I think there is a huge amount of talent out there. Whatever background or ethnicity or faith or any of those things it comes from. And I just think the world will be a better place, and the world of business will be a better place by having all of that talent involved. So leveling up the playing field is probably number one. My second one, I suppose, is abundance mentality, for want of a better word. I talk about making the cake bigger for everybody to share in it. So I do believe very strongly about businesses collaborating with each other, about us all working together to try and improve things, rather than absolutely cutthroat competition, fighting to get a bigger slice of the cake. I genuinely think we can make the cake bigger. So that's another core value, I suppose. And I suppose the third one is slightly contradicts the second one, because I am uber competitive as well. So, but what I mean by that is collective competition. So I do think we should challenge norms. We should strive to be better. We should constantly learn. We should get rid of the outdated rules that don't serve us anymore, and be constantly willing to challenge things if they're not right. So I suppose there's this abundance mentality. There's this ability to want to see the world differently and to challenge things, and there's this level playing field. I could go on, there's lots of other things I care about, but those are probably the three main things that I care about.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. You see, my next question was going to be about what childhood experiences have influenced these things that were important, but you're ahead of the game. And you know, just hearing about your mum, single parent, being a barmaid, you know, I can totally relate to that. My mum had 3 cleaning jobs at one stage. But, you know, yay for these mums that have got a strong work ethic, that lead their girls, and, you know, and yay for you to break through and go, well, just because nobody's been to university in my family, it doesn't mean to say I can't either. So you'd obviously got that.
Yes, I never saw it like that. So so for example, I never had this master plan. If you'd have asked my teenage self what I was going to do, it was quite clear I was going to be an actress, and I was going to end up writing and directing musical theatre as well. So I cared passionately about theatre, less so about TV, film and that kind of stuff. So there was never a master plan to end up doing what I'm doing. And I'd say that's probably the other thing. If I'd have thought too much about that at the word go at that point, I might have had some of those self-limiting beliefs that said, who are you to think you can do that? You don't come from a background like that. But you see, it didn't happen like that. It's just been one happy accident at a time. And I suppose I've had an open enough mind to go, yeah, I can have a go at that. I'll try that. Oh yeah, why not? So I've kind of had the why not mentality. But if I'd have sat there 30 years ago mapping this out, I would have probably freaked myself out completely and panicked. So I think that's probably been the other thing, is I've not mapped that out too far ahead. I've just gone with the next opportunity and pushed myself actually, and say, well, why not try it? And I think that would be my advice to anybody, is to don't scare yourself by mapping it out too far. Just take one step at a time and see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you know, like when I work with businesses and we look at vision and all that sort of thing. And often it can seem so scary, can't it, when we're traveling to a faraway destination? But I say what matters is the first step, and then the next step, and then the next step after that. You know, long journey is made up of lots of little steps. But where did your why not mentality come from? When did that start?
I don't know, but I've mentioned this to you previously. I remember writing a poem when I was very young, less than 10, and the poem was called Don't, and essentially it was don't do this, don't do that, don't do the other. And I knew from a very early age that with my stepdad at the time, who was in my life for a few years, was constantly telling me what I couldn't do. And I don't know where it was wired into me, but I thought back about, no, I can. So every time somebody told me I couldn't, my brain said, no, but I can. So don't tell me don't, because I'll fight it. So I have no idea where that came from. Genuinely, I can't pinpoint it. But all I know is that from quite a young age, I would fight back if somebody told me I couldn't do something. Probably looking back now as a parent, the utter child from hell, because I wouldn't be told what to do. I wanted to be in control of my own destiny. But actually, the more somebody tried to tell me I couldn't do something or restrict me, I remember GCSE French, the teacher, very traditional, very old-fashioned chap, basically told me a few months before the exam, you're never going to pass. So I went and got an A because he told me that I wasn't going to pass. So there's obviously been something wired in me that the minute somebody tells me I can't do something, I will just go into the can-do mentality. I don't know where it came from, Estelle. I've no idea, if I'm honest with you.
Again, one of my phrases is that positivity or good things can actually come from adversity.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
You know, I call him Mr. Biology teacher, but he said a similar thing to me. He said, well, I won't tell you actually what he said. It is really impolite. It was something that you could get away with in the 80s, but it had to do with the way I looked. And he said, and you'll never amount to anything in this world. And that was my first silent, well, I won't say it anyway, I'll be polite, but you know, you can imagine.
This point about adversity, I feel so blessed with my adversity, so to speak. Now, goodness, I haven't had horrendous adversity. I won't bore you with all the detail, but I did have an unusual childhood. But you know, and there were definitely some obstacles and things that made my childhood quite tricky, but I see that as a blessing, because actually when I look at the crisis we're in now, it's people like you or I or other people that have had difficult things happen in our past. We are so well equipped to deal with this. I watch some of the politicians, without casting too many aspersions here, who've probably had much more sheltered lives, had a very straightforward, come from very affluent families, running around like headless chickens, because quite frankly and they look like they're about to fall over, some of them, because they've not had to deal with adversity. And I think the adversity that I see but much more, you know, when you look at people who had real adversity, you know, some of the stories you hear from immigrants coming into the country and various other things, you know, proper persecution, proper being afraid for their lives. I think if you can channel that into something positive, I think it sets us up so much better equipped. So when people have talked to me about social mobility or being a woman as being a problem, or indeed holding us back or a disadvantage that we've got to overcome, I fight back and say I feel totally blessed, because I just think I'm so much better equipped to deal with all the, forgive me, but shit that comes our way, because we know how to deal with it. So I think in crisis at the moment, it's no surprise to me that if you look around the world, some of the people who appear to be doing the best dealing with the very, very difficult situations that are running around the world at the moment are people that have had adversity or discrimination to deal with or something like that. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, again, when I talk to either clients or training delegates about how personality is formed, and these sometimes which can be perceived as minor to the adult, but in the child in that moment was a significant moment, and it can make parents almost paranoid about, oh my goodness, you know, we can really affect our children just by some of these events. And then I'm like, yeah, and I said, but on the flip side, one of the challenges we've got with the generation, with my child, so my child is that we can be accused of being helicopter parents and smoothing the way for them so that they don't experience that adversity. So it's a tricky one, isn't it? You know,
it is actually. I do worry about that. You know, I look at my children now; they are so privileged in the traditional sense of the word. I do worry they're not getting the same benefits that I got out of the difficulties I had. You know, silly things like I didn't go abroad until I was in my 20s on holiday. My children have been all over the world. You know, we didn't have a car, so I was used to walking everywhere. My children, we drive them around like taxi service, and you know, from a very young age I was cooking food and looking after my little sister, whereas my children haven't had to do any of that. So I'm not saying that I want to deliberately make their lives harder. Obviously you wouldn't do that. But I do worry sometimes about how to help them in the future by perhaps not making things quite so straightforward for them. But you know, what are we to do? We're not going to make life difficult for our own children, but we do need to find different ways of helping expose them to the full range of what's going on in the world, I think.
And then the help, you and I have spoken about resilience before, haven't we? But it builds that resilience, doesn't
Definitely.
it? Yeah. So one of the things I talk about is that values and beliefs are inextricably linked. So as to what comes first, that's a bit of a debate. But, you know, for example, so I've spoken before about, and you were very kind and have endorsed my book, and will have read in there that I spoke about being on thick table. And so what that grew out of that was a value of achievement. So that I work towards achievement as a way to get away from a lack of achievement, if that makes sense. So that's the value. And then round that we have supporting beliefs that keep that value in place. So for example, it would have been, well, I am not as clever as other people. So that would keep achievement in place. But then what we can do sometimes with, so my belief is that people can get stressed sometimes when they overdo a value. So when values aren't in balance, or they're not being met equally, we can feel stress. So for example, if you weren't getting your value of inclusion met, that would create some uncomfortable feelings. And so we've always got this challenge of trying to keep them in balance. But also when we do havening work around those beliefs, which are also connected to events, then we can change the priority of our values as well, which is quite fascinating. So is achievement important to me? Yes, it is. But having done the havening work, it's a lower priority, if that makes sense, because I've taken out some of those limiting beliefs. So what limiting belief have you overcome in your career? Because, you know, to me, you just sound like you power through everything.
Oh, no, I don't. No, I absolutely don't. And, you know, I'm so normal, it's untrue. I have the same hang-ups, probably more hang-ups than everybody else does. Just listening to you speak, what I probably should have said, and I have no idea whether these are beliefs or values or principles or whatever they are, but there are two words that probably underpin those other things I said to you. One is fairness and one is freedom. And I think when you look at the things I talked there about abundance mentality and inclusion and ambition and competition and all the rest of it, I think the fairness and the freedom come through as well. And that comes back to the don't, you know, the can-do mentality that comes from the freedom, and the inclusion and the level playing field comes from the fairness. So I would say my overdone strengths, I'll come back to the self-limiting beliefs, but my overdone strengths, if I feel something isn't fair, I can get very passionate. And what happens is I'm somebody who'll run into a fight, not away from a fight. So what I have to do is protect myself about not fighting every single fight, because sometimes you just feel that you're banging your head against a brick wall and you wear yourself out. So I've had to teach myself, even though those underpinning things like freedom and fairness, I will fight to the death for those things.
Yeah.
I don't actually want to do that, because what I need to do is win the war, not the battles. So one thing I've had to do to overcome, I know it's not really a self-limiting belief, but what I've had to do is try and pace myself a bit better, and try not to go after every fight for fairness and every fight for freedom. So I don't know how that fits into your diagram, but that's one big thing that I've learned, because I will wear myself out. And I've had periods in my life where I've had burnout, like many other people have as well. I've just got exhausted. So pace and trying not to fight every fight, I think, big lesson for me. The other self-limiting belief I had to get over, and I'm over it now mostly, is that I'm not worthy, or that I'm not entitled for things. So, and I definitely have this hang up that the minute things start going right, I instantly think they're going to go wrong.
Yes.
So I have to watch out for that as well, because what it does is it stops me celebrating success. And you heard me say it at the top of this call, you know, I'm really reluctant to talk about achievement, because the minute I do that, I fear something will go wrong. So, you know, I can really beat myself up about that one. And the other thing is I carry responsibility for everything, and I feel guilty for everything. So I absolutely will take on board everybody else's guilt, let alone my own guilt. So I go around collecting things that I feel guilty for. And so you know, I have a huge amount of hang-ups, but I suppose what I've done, and with the help of, I guess, partly age, partly the ability to have hindsight, and then through help from people like you, Estelle, as well, is to find a way of almost bringing up a force field that protects me from some of those things. So somebody years ago said to me, close the door on that episode and leave some post-it notes on there about what you've learned. So I now try and flip into reflecting, learning. I journal a lot. I try and really make sure I'm taking the learnings out of a situation, and that helps me create this force field, which stops me going back into some of those self-limiting beliefs as well. Your book, by the way, I wasn't being kind about your book. It's fantastic. And what I love about your book, and I can't wait to see a printed version of it. Obviously, I was lucky enough to read a manuscript, but what I loved about it was so broad in terms of all the different things it could help people with. It really does. There's something in there for everybody, literally. And there were things in there that have really made me stop and think. Even now, when I've read so much and I've tried to learn so much, there's new stuff in there, which was brilliant. And then you flip it into the practical tips and the things that you can do about it as well. So I've probably read a huge amount over the years, which has also helped me learn and then put that force field up to help control some of the self-limiting beliefs. And your book, even though I've read zillions of things, your book really, really helped me as well.
Oh, thank you. No, well, I appreciate that. That's kind. Have you read, interestingly, because you keep using the phrase flip it. Have you read that book?
No, you found a new one for me now. So. Brilliant.
No, because I haven't read it yet. But the guy
that sounds good.
The guy who's written it, Michael Heppel,
I'm a big fan of his, and his first book, How to Be Brilliant, inspired my business. So, but I know about Flip It as well. And I was thinking, I don't need, I've got a big stack of books over there in that corner. No, I need, so I'm thinking, I don't want to just add another one, but because you were using the term, I thought, I wonder if you just actually flip it.
But that sounds good. But what I have believed for years and years, somebody once drew me the little diagram, belief, action, result. If you imagine a virtuous circle with arrows, belief, action, result, that one has stuck with me for years and years and years, which is, if you can sort that belief out, you'll sort your actions out, which will enhance the result and reaffirm the beliefs. So from that, I've always taken this view that you can choose your mindset, whatever it is. And I think that's probably the primary thing that's helped me along the way. The other thing I should say, I'm like you, but top tip. So my husband literally says, you're not buying another book, are you? Put them on a Kindle. He can't see them anymore. So whilst I have got a pile of books around, he's no idea how many books are on the Kindle. And I'm safe because he won't watch this. So we're okay.
Your secret's safe with me.
Yes.
You see, I again, listening to you, and I thought it's so obvious why you're a success, because you lead with bravery and courage. Even I think it's called the cybernetic cycle or something like that, because I know what you're referring to.
Right.
And you can interrupt it at any stage. So you can, force change and go out and change and do something differently, which is the behavior piece, which then can reinforce your belief about yourself as well. But the point is, you're brave and you keep powering on through, don't you?
It's funny, I was on a group, I belong a couple of different groups where I network with other chief execs, and we were on a conversation 2 or 3 weeks ago talking about courage. And a lot of the other chief execs on the call was saying to me, you're obviously really brave, you're a pioneer in your sector, you're doing all of this stuff. We decided I was a pirate in the end, which I felt quite happy about being a pirate, or a buccaneer, I think was the but I just sat there with this kind of quizzical look on my face thinking, I don't feel remotely brave. And I really had to go away and think about this, because I don't really think I am brave at all. But the reason that I kind of made sense of this was, it's actually to do with doing the right thing and knowing who you are and what your purpose is. And if you know what all of those things are, doing the right thing doesn't feel at all brave. You just think you're doing what you should be doing. So other people might look at it and say it's really brave. I just think I'm doing the right thing. And it comes from a strong sense of duty as well, a strong sense of responsibility. So again, a combination of knowing what your purpose is and having a really clear sense of duty, you might do things which seem brave or a bit ballsy or make tough decisions or all of those things. But I don't think I've ever done a single brave thing, really. But I'm sure if again, it's about looking at your benchmark. If you look at some of the things that we are doing with the business at the moment, they are quite brave. We're changing the sector. We're doing some very, very different things in the sector. And, I've made some tough decisions since I've been in the job, but none of it has ever felt brave to me, because it's totally on purpose. And that was how I was able to make sense of that, because I recognized that people were giving me examples and saying, but this is really brave and that's really brave, but it's not, it's just on purpose. And that would be my main advice to anybody, is if you sort that purpose out, the decisions you make in the context of that are much easier to do, much easier.
And also, you never struggle to get out of bed in the morning, do you, when you're in line with purpose, values?
No, I mean, well, I do, because I'm constantly knackered. but that's where reading your book was really helpful, because I know I've got something going on there with inflammation, and I've got to look better at my diet and various other things. But no, I'm a night person, so my bigger problem is getting myself to stop reading or stop writing stuff or stop wanting to work and go to sleep. But I'm a night owl, definitely.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. So what would you say, I suppose it's a dual question, what causes stress and how do you resolve it? How do you manage stress personally? What do you do?
So I this is a work in progress for me. On the whole, I can be incredibly busy and working very hard and not be stressed. The thing that causes me stress that I'm still resolving is when I feel my integrity is being attacked, or or for example, I hate it when people challenge things that are not based on the truth or based on fact. So that one will get to me. So there are still things like that can actually get to me quite profoundly, but on the whole, I would say I'm not stressed. One of the things that's frustrated me over the years is I'm quite high energy and I'm very passionate, so I can be very gregarious and very excitable and very enthusiastic, I suppose. And the amount of people who've said to me, oh, you seem really stressed, or calm down, and I've taken a real offense to that, because I'm not remotely stressed, I'm energized. And I think sometimes we have to be very mindful about the effect that we might be projecting stress even if you don't feel stressed. So I've had to really landmark it now, or signpost it for my husband and for various other people, to say there's a difference between being busy and being stressed, or being excited and being stressed. So I will tell you if I feel stressed, and I have said that even in the past 2 or 3 weeks. I have said, okay, I'm just going to say I'm stressed. So I find that one of the ways of coping with it is actually admitting it, but also being able to separate it from what's stress and what isn't stress, and then asking for help, which for many of us as leaders is really difficult to ask for help. And we need to be willing to do it, and not just from specialists like you, but from our teams or from our partners or from our children or our parents or our friends. You know, we as leaders, we very often carry so many other people. It is perfectly okay sometimes to say, you know what, I can't stay at the front of the V, I need to come back. You know, if you think about how geese fly, the same goose doesn't stay at the front of the V all the time. So sometimes it's okay to step back, re-energize, and come back in again. And I think that's one of the hardest things as a leader, is to admit to other people that you might need a bit of help, or you need to just step back a bit and then you'll kind of come back. So taken me a long time to get that, but yeah, I feel better for having that ability to be honest with people about that now. But you have to signpost it as well. And particularly for people like me, if I don't signpost it, there's a fear that people will think I'm stressed all the time, when actually I'm not at all stressed. I'm busy, I'm energized, but it's not stress.
Yeah, and I think there's so many nuggets of genius in everything that you're saying, you know, really. I'm just like, I'm busy making notes, to be honest. And yeah, no, it's just brilliant. And then I thought, there she goes again with the metaphors that just make perfect sense. You know, you summarized in a few words.
You do metaphors a lot, actually. I love your book, and I love how in your book you managed to get a metaphor and stick to it all the way through. I'm just so full of metaphors, they're flying out all over the place, but your sailing and your boat metaphor that goes right the way through is really, really handy. It's a lovely idea that you've developed there.
I had to stretch it at certain points.
How do I make a boat fit here? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What, you know, to pick up on a point that you said earlier, what do you think it is that makes it hard for leaders to ask for help? Because you're absolutely right.
I think there's some horrible old-fashioned stereotypes playing. I mean, I'm a big believer in smashing stereotypes, as you can probably tell. But, you know, there's a very old-fashioned traditional thing that says, you know, the leader must be in control, the leader must be right, the leader must be seen to know what to do all the time. I'd like to think we are way past that. We should be decades past that. I have to say, as a woman, there's a real advantage as a leader, because I think it's easier on the whole, massive generalization, for women to accept and say that. I think little boys and men have been brought up to not admit, quotes, weakness. And by the way, I don't think any of this, admitting you needing help, is not a weakness. It's definitely a strength. But, you know, we condition ourselves into certain things. So we talk about softer skills like listening, or like collaborating, or like, you know, empathizing. These are not soft skills. These are strong skills. We need to flip and back to flip again, flip the whole thing on its head and say some of these things are great strengths. But I think traditionally, the way we've written about leadership, we would imply that some of these things are potentially weaknesses or failure, or not synonymous with leadership. But you may have heard me talk about this before. There was a piece of research in 2013 called the Athena Doctrine, which was looking at leadership skills required for the future. And an enormous amount of those leadership skills that were identified by thousands of people that took part in it were leadership skills that were then deemed to be more feminine than masculine. Yes. And I do think, therefore, as a woman, it's probably, shouldn't be, but it's a bit more acceptable for us to do some of that stuff. And I think equally, though, when a man is, quotes, brave enough to do that, the power of it is utterly phenomenal. You know, we saw in early lockdown some leaders on YouTube or on LinkedIn in videos crying because they were emotional about what was going on. The power of that is unbelievably well, it's just off the scale, really. Whereas it might be expected that a woman might be tearful or emotional. When a man does it, just open up to that power, guys, because the power you can control, and the loyalty that you will develop from opening up, it's there for you to take.
Absolutely. And again, that's the thing about being a leader. You lead things in other people, don't you? So to give permission to all the men like that. And I mean, this week, or over the last month, I've been doing lots of emotional intelligence profiling. And one of the interesting things that's come out of that is that there's been an element of persuade and convince that, look, emotional intelligence is a good thing. And, you know, and do the whole quoting statistics, you know, those that have higher emotional intelligence actually are more successful. So, you know, sweeping generalization, but the gentlemen like that fact. And then the other interesting thing that's come out as I've been exploring that feedback, particularly again with my gentleman clients, is they were talking about how challenging they find it when somebody is emotional. And I said, well, come on, let's define what emotions are. You know, you could argue we've got lots of emotions. I mean, in fact, I've got a wheel behind me with all the emotions that are on there. And that's for my gentleman clients, actually, because I'll say, how do you feel? And they will say, well, I don't know. I'll say, right, well, come on, let's go and look at the wheel and let's pick a word.
Brilliant.
But actually, you know, I said, why is it that it's okay to show anger in the workforce? You know, it's okay to be angry or frustrated about something, but it's not okay to be sad or anxious about something, or you know, why would we be critical of somebody that was excitable or anything else? Do you know what I mean? Because it's not. But I said, if you think about emotion, it's there for a purpose. It's to drive motion. So it's to make us act.
Nice.
It's not mine. Can't claim it. I heard it. No, I heard it. I heard it on a seminar, I think, or in a book. But yeah, no. So if you think about, if you smell a piece of rotten fish, you will experience disgust, and it's designed to move you away from the fish.
Yeah.
And when I explained emotions in that context, kind of went, oh, right, okay, yes, so it's okay for me to have emotions then, isn't it? So it is. I find it fascinating.
It is, but the power of using it, and I truly think that through the pandemic, we've seen the power of people using their emotions as well to shift. But that's what people need now. I mean, I go on about this a lot, but you know, our job primarily, my job is purely about people. Of course it's about numbers, and of course it's about strategy, but ultimately it's about people. I mean, particularly for me, we've got 900 people or so who are our product as well, you know, because I work for a law firm, so you know, we sell people, metaphorically, obviously. So I have to connect with all of those people, and I need to meet them where they're at, which is massively important. So emotional intelligence, you can't do it if you can't empathize and if you can't understand people. We also now as leaders need to be relevant for nearly 5 working generations with very different mindsets, very different needs. Again, I don't want to generalize the entire world into 5 generations, but you know, actually we've got 7 billion mindsets out there. So understanding people, I would argue with any chief exec who says that's not their primary part of their job, because the way they will get superior performance and better financial return and sustainable profitability is through the power of harnessing people, and never more so than now. And I feel that so strongly.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And interestingly, there's another female leader I work with, and she says a similar thing. She talks to a team about results through people. So in other words, focus on your people and then the results will come. We've inbuilt that into our strategy. Basically, we've recognized that unlocking the potential of our people unlocks another virtuous cycle here, unlocks the potential of the clients, which unlocks the potential of the numbers, which you reinvest back into the people, and you're just back into that. Again, I stole that years ago when I was a trainee chartered accountant. I think they told me that day one on a training course, stuck with me forever, which is you've got to get that virtuous cycle going. And I just think, given where the world's at and society's at and everything else at the moment, and the needs particularly of the upcoming generations, if you think about everything you read about the research about Gen Z and Gen Alpha, purpose, mastery, all of those things, being part of something they can believe in, being with a team, all of these things have come right up the agenda now. So it's even more important. It has been absolutely fascinating listening to you. And to be honest, I've skipped quite a few questions because I've been so enthralled with you and just wanted to ask more and more. I'm going to close with one question, and that is, what would you say is your biggest insider secret that you'd like to share?
Just be yourself. I mean, honestly, it takes so much time and energy to try and be somebody else. Put all of that positive energy into just being who you are and stop worrying about what everybody else thinks about you. So yeah, just be yourself. That's the main thing. And you know, we're here to enjoy the journey as well as the destination. And if you are able to be yourself through that journey, it's going to be much more enjoyable.
Absolutely. And you know, it takes so much more bandwidth, doesn't it, to unmask and not be yourself.
Yes.
Not as effective. No, well, I mean, I called my business Be, because it's about being yourself.
Yes.
No. So to conclude, listeners, this is my experience of you, Sarah Walker-Smith, amazing being. You are always candid, authentic, and purpose-driven. I think, you know, I've seen on social media, you've been such a guiding light, you know, through not only with your team, but also with other leaders, you know, particularly through this recession, through the pandemic. You know, I can't recommend enough that you follow Sarah on social media. And her handle is, I'm looking for my piece of paper. So if you're a Twitter fan, her handle is at PG Walker-Smith. And you'll find her easily on LinkedIn, Sarah Walker-Smith. Definitely recommend following her. And you do blogs, you do social media posts, you've got your Shed Life vlog, which I was very honoured to be on.
You were there?
And, and I think you have this rare dual gift, because you have all the commercial acumen, but combined with creativity, you know, and I think it enables you to express unique ideas, and we've heard so many metaphors which make it easy to understand. And I can only say this, ladies and gentlemen, because I used to work in the legal industry myself. I think making things easy to understand is a really uncommon strength. And again, I think that's why your organisations are a success. And you know, I'm going to leave you with two of Sarah's quotes, which again are just genius. So, let's not make a deeper recession a self-fulfilling prophecy. Couldn't agree more. And think of this as piloting a glider rather than riding a roller coaster, or worse still, driving a steamroller. Beautiful. Thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it. It's been like having podcasting royalty on today.
You are funny.
No, honestly, that's how it feels.
Estelle, come on. Yeah, you make such a difference to so many of us. So thank you for everything you do as well.
No, it's been a pleasure. If you'd like to be notified when the next episode drops, remember to subscribe. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who might benefit. Finally, if any of these topics have sparked your interest and you'd like to work with me, you can apply for a free discovery call at estelleread.com. Let's see if we're a good fit. You'll also find plenty of free resources there. I'm Estelle Read, executive coach, speaker, and best-selling author, and this has been the Optimizing Your Brilliance podcast. Thanks for listening. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered professional advice. Please consult with a qualified professional for any specific advice related to your situation.